Hello, good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever it is, wherever you are at whatever time it is that you're watching this. I had said that I was going to try to make weekly videos, and apparently I am a liar because life continues to get away from me, and it's life. So, I talked last time about the reason why I was so interested in hypnotherapy and what got me interested in hypnotherapy. And I have completed the first courses for hypnosis, and I'm about halfway through the second course for hypnotherapy. So I should be done by mid next month, maybe earlier. Just depends on how much life continues to get away from me. So the website is up and running. There are some kinks that need to be worked out with that. You can find that at spiritualfourthdimension.com, which I will add to this description whenever I'm done. So if you get this, if you're seeing this, if you are watching it, like it, share it, follow it, so that you can get more information as I provide more information. So today what we are going to do is basically story time. So I talked about my reasoning for getting into hypnotherapy. What I'm going to talk about now is the experience that I had with it. So let me give you a little bit of backstory here. Whenever I found the person that was going to do the hypnotherapy, it was extremely random. I'd been working at a treatment center, and I always talked about this stuff. I explained this in the last video. I always talked about this stuff. I always talked about the same thing that I talked about in the last video with the same kind of passion. This time, whenever I had a client that left, he sent me a message and said, hey, the therapist that I was, suggested to go see does that same hypnotherapy stuff that you were always talking about. So he gave me the name and number, and I called the guy, and we started off with virtual sessions. So this is why I know that the virtual sessions can work. This is how we started off. However, I felt like I needed something more personal. I needed to be like right there in person, but that doesn't mean that you can't get there with virtual sessions. And that is something that I talked to the woman who I do virtual courses with right now, because I was worried about that. And she said prior COVID, she would have agreed that no, it needs to be in person. But since COVID, she didn't want to have her clients go without. So they started doing virtual, and she was able to find it just as effective. Although, it could, I don't know. I think that it would be better in person, but it doesn't mean that virtual is out of the question. So we started off with a couple of virtual sessions, and the only thing that we did in those virtual sessions was get to know each other, build rapport. I explained to him kind of the reason that I got here, how I got here, how partially it was based off of like substance abuse, and then partially it was based off of, just my reasonings. Like I kind of had this feeling ever since my husband had died. Like prior to him dying, he was a neat freak, and he was the kind of person that like you could never keep him happy enough with the house being clean. I would spend all day taking care of the kids, cleaning the house. Like we had a continuous routine of like get up, play with the kids, feed, change diapers, all that stuff. Let them play, clean the house, let them take a nap. They'd get up, clean the house, play some more, clean the house again, work on dinner, do some workouts. The whole time it was just like this constant battle of keeping the house clean. And then whenever he got home, he would be saying hi to me, kissing me, and reaching behind me to grab a rag off the sink to continue to wipe up where I was making dinner. Like it was just, he was never satisfied enough with how clean it needed to be. So I tell you that to tell you this. After he passed, I found myself being the same way. I found myself taking the quirks that he had and the ones that used to drive me crazy, and it was like they became a part of me after he died. So whenever I learned about hypnotherapy stuff, one of the things that I learned about was whenever somebody passes, they can attach, their soul can be attached to somebody else. Sounds a little different, but there's a lot of stories that go into these books that explain how this happened. So I was kind of convinced that maybe because of the malicious way that he committed suicide, another thing that it said was that, you know, whenever something like that happens, that the soul can like shatter, and you got to kind of, through hypnotherapy, you've got to go through this course of series of hypnosis to be able to help that soul find its soul parts and connect itself so that it can move on. I'm not there yet, but the reason I'm telling you that is because that's what I was kind of convinced had happened. So I explained this to the therapist, and he said, look, like, let's not look for that. Let's just see where things go. And his example was the body is like a sponge, so it will collect things, and whatever needs to come out whenever it needs to come out will come out. So we did our sessions initially through virtual, and what we did, like I said, gain rapport, explained to him about myself, and we practiced. And what we practiced was getting me into that meditative state, into that deep state. Luckily, I am somebody who already at that time especially had already experienced meditation and put a lot of efforts toward meditation. I don't do it as much now as I wish that I should. But, you know, life, kids, sometimes it's hard to find a quiet place. Hence why I'm doing this prior to clocking in at work. It was easy for me to go into that meditative state. So that would be something that I would suggest for any future clients, is to be able to start off just practicing going into that meditative state. So after we did that for a couple of sessions, I drove to Michigan and met with him so that we could do our own hypnotherapy session. So that is what story time is going to be. And I just want to tell you how things kind of work out strangely. As I've been working on my own hypnotherapy, I've been keeping everything in this notebook. And I was flipping through this notebook because I'm a hoarder and I tend to save things forever. And I was looking through this notebook because I thought it was just an old school notebook. But after I got to going through it, I realized that after I finished my hypnotherapy, I had written down as much as that I could so that I wouldn't forget it and so that I would have it. And that the story from my hypnosis is actually in this notebook. As soon as I can find it, I'll explain it to you. Find it here. All right. So we did this on February 21st, 2001. So it's been almost 2 years ago, and this is still a lot fresh in my mind, but the reason that I'm pulling this out is just so I don't forget any little pieces. So we started off with considering emotions that I might have been feeling or lacking, and some of the emotions that I've been feeling and lacking is just like emotional detachment is the best way that I could really explain it. If you would have told me at that time, like, that I would find somebody and that we would be together and live happily ever after, I would have told you that that was not going to happen because I couldn't maintain a relationship. I would start off with somebody and there wasn't usually anything wrong with them, but I would find things wrong with them, find little things that irritated me about them, and decide that that wasn't for me and I wasn't going to be able to do that. The one time that I really did think that I could have somebody that I could stay with, like, they had really bad boundaries, so it just didn't work out. All right, so we started off with considering over what emotions I was lacking and when that pattern began. So to do that, what we had to do was go into my earliest memory. And whenever we went into my earliest memory, what I thought of initially is a story that my mom always used to tell about how we lived in this house, and I would go in to this cabinet where she kept all of her canned goods, and I would go in and I would rip all the labels off these cans. I don't know why I did it, but I did it. Some kind of self-soothing, like all the kids watch things now that they call it satisfying. I guess that's to me what was satisfying, ripping all the labels off these cans. So she would have to go home every day after grocery shopping and write on the cans what they were, because she knew I was going to take the labels off of them. So that was kind of where I went in my mind, even though I don't remember it as well as my mom probably does. That was where I went in my mind. And figuring out where that time frame is. So that at that time frame, my parents were recently separated. Even though I don't remember the chain of events that went to that separation, I know them, but I don't remember them. And she was kind of going through a hard time with it, is what I remember through my hypnotherapy. She was going through a hard time with it. She was kind of dealing with that through hanging out with friends and whatnot. And this is not a stab against my mom by any means, because I've went through things, you have went through things, we have all went through things where we cope in the best way that we can. My coping mechanism for many years was drugs and alcohol. So she had her friends, she had a roommate, they were hanging out. Somewhere along the line, I learned that kids are to be kind of seen and not heard. So I can remember all these people that would come over, and they were like, "Oh, she's such a pretty girl. She's such a cute little girl." But I was kind of quiet and backward. And I don't know if I was kind of quiet and backward because that was the mindset that I had, was that we needed to kind of be seen and not heard. But somewhere along the line, I kind of ended up in the corner somewhere coloring pictures for everybody, and coloring these pictures, and would hand them off to all my mom's friends. And they were, yeah, thanks, just like you would be as an adult if this kid come over and colors you a picture. Like, you're not gonna save it, but they might have had a couple beers and forgot it there, and it probably hurt my feelings. So somewhere I got to feeling like it was okay to be, this pretty little girl in the corner somewhere drawing pictures, but that was kind of where I needed to be. I didn't really need to be involved with everybody else, because realistically everybody else was, Friday night drinking or working, or had things they were adult things that were going on. And there was just things that kids didn't need to be a part of. So I started feeling omitted, is what I remembered through this, through this hypnotherapy. And this was a first regression, was going back into this childhood and feeling that feeling of omission, which creates guilt and shame. That guilt and shame carried on whenever my husband committed suicide, because I felt like that I shouldn't have let that happen. Now, for any of you guys that do or don't know the story for that, this man had told me he was going to commit suicide for years. I didn't believe him anymore. I really thought that it was just an attention-seeking factor. I felt like it was something that he was doing to control me, and at that time, we were on the verge of probably splitting up. And whenever he kept talking about it, I was like, no, you're not. If you were going to, you would have by now. You don't have the means to be able to do it. You're just not going to. And I was wrong. And whenever he pulled the gun out, I wanted to stop him, but I knew that he would kill me too. He made that very clear. I saw that in his eyes. And when he went to the basement, I was afraid to go to the bottom of the steps. I stood at the top of the steps and tried to talk him out of it for 2 hours. I stood at the top of the steps and tried to talk him out of it. I even said at a point, think about it. Just think about it. I'll go away. I'll go to McDonald's and grab us some frappes, and I'll come back and just think about it, and we'll talk. And I did. I went to McDonald's and I grabbed some frappes, and I came back and he was still sitting at the bottom of the steps with the gun. He was not changing his mind. I had a baby in the car. One of my kids was with my dad. My other one was still home with me. When he had pulled the gun out and said he was going to the basement, after I tried to stop him and he made it clear he would kill me, I grabbed the baby, because all I could think of was, if that shotgun goes through, you know, the floor, like, what if it hits the baby? So I'd taken the baby out to the car, and it was hot. It was July, and it started sprinkling, and the baby's in the car. I had had the windows down. I couldn't leave the windows down while it's sprinkling. The baby's in the car. I just ran out of options. I didn't know what to do. So I called the cops and said, I don't want you to arrest him. I just want you to come get the gun. And when he saw through the little windows in the basement, he saw that the cop pull up across the street. He realized that I had called the cops, and I said, don't do it. Like, tell him I'm crazy. You're good at that. Like, he was very narcissistic. You're really good at letting people know that I'm the crazy one and you're not. So tell him I'm crazy. Run. Whatever you got to do. He chose not to do that. He chose to pull the trigger instead. So I felt a lot of guilt and shame for that. Like, what could I have done differently? Probably not much. In my head, I think, like, maybe I should have went down and wrestled the gun from him. Then we'd probably both be dead, and our kids would have no parents. But, you know, like, what could I have done different? But either way, like, I felt some guilt and shame. So this is a emotion that I have been carrying on since I was a kid. This guilt and shame, like, for my presence. Not through anybody's fault, but, like, we have to be careful how we treat our kids, because you never know what that's gonna create for them later. So we go into that, and as a little girl, I'm feeling useless. I'm feeling confused. I'm happy to be considered, you know, this pretty little girl and a good girl that sits in the corner and doesn't really create any problems, but I'm also feeling a little unloved. Because I want to be something other than just this pretty little girl in the corner. Like, can I be smart? Can I be exciting? Can I be something more? And I think that's why I drew all those pictures and gave them to people, because I just wanted to be noticed. So when we start to go into the next regression, there's two theories that can happen here, because what I felt, I didn't see much of anything. It's what I felt. So what the therapist did is he did this kind of tapping thing and took me down into the first regression. The first regression takes me into this darkness, and I can feel that it's dark. I can feel that it's kind of cold, but what I can feel the most is something around my neck, and I'm choking. I can't see anything. It's something around my neck, and it's choking. And the reason there's two theories is because the therapist asked me, do you think that you're in the womb? Is it possible that there's an umbilical cord around your neck? And maybe there was. It's not what I felt like was happening though. It felt like somebody's hands were around my neck and they were choking me to death. That's what it felt like. So obviously I have a history of toxic relationships in this current life. If you know me, or if you know, that's usually if you went through addictions, you have a history of toxic relationships. So, I feel this constricting. It's hard to breathe. It's continuing to get tighter, and everything kind of goes black. It could be an umbilical cord. Could have been somebody choking me to death. I don't know which one it was. I really think that it was the latter though. So after I'm dying, like, there's this silence and this darkness, and I'm there for a while. I'm there for so long that the therapist is asking me what's happening. And I can't really explain it because I'm just watching for what's going to happen. And I wish I had brought it because I bought it just to make this video and my kids steal things. So if you think about those everybody's got those fidgets now. If you think about those ones that are like the squishy ball, but that's got the net around it, this is what I started to see, except for it was like my whole vision. And it was this bright purple, like almost a bluish pinkish tint to it. It was this bright purple. I can't explain. Like, I've looked for this color on a color wheel and through those prism things where you can choose a color, and I just can't find this color. Like, I cannot explain it. There's a tapestry across from me that has almost close to the same color in it, but it just doesn't give it justice. Like, what goes on inside the spiritual world, you don't have here in the physical world. So it's like this purple, bluish, pinkish color is surrounding. And I know that it's the color of my aura. I don't know how to explain how I know that it's the color of my aura, but I do. And I'm watching it, and it's beautiful, and it's pulsating. And then all of a sudden it looks like this net is around it, and I can still see the colors because it's a net, like, in the color, the pulsation is happening through the net. So it was almost like there was something dark trying to grab a hold of my aura and pull me back. And it was a different feeling because as I'm watching this, like, I don't feel unsafe, but I can tell that there's something around that is kind of pulling me back. So as I'm looking around more, there's nothing really happening on my right. But on my left, everything feels great. Everything feels amazing. It's like the happiest feeling that you could ever have in your life is right here on the left. Like, I cannot explain to you how amazing it was. And it was like my body was like almost cut in half. Like, I can feel all this like amazingness over here, but over here there's like not really anything happening. So at a point I'm looking over and to the left, and there's these little spiritual things. I don't know how to explain them. Whenever I say this to people, they kind of laugh at me, but this is the best way that I have to explain this. It was almost like little gummy bears. That's what they look like. It was almost little gummy bears, and they were like doing this flip over this bridge. So while they're doing this flip over this bridge, it's almost like they're asking me to come play with them. And I want to go play with them really, really badly, but I can't because I don't feel like I deserve to be there. And like the bridge is like this golden, and they're doing these little flippy things over this bridge, and like they're not saying anything, but they're asking me without saying anything to come with them. And I felt like over there was probably where the divine is, where the ultimate source is, where what you might call God and heaven. Like, that's where they were trying to take me. But I didn't feel like I deserved to be there. So I watched this for a while, and regardless of how persistent this invitation is, it makes me, it's the happiest feeling. I cannot explain it. The closest I can come to explaining it is the feeling you get the first time that you hold your baby after you give birth. That's the closest I can give to the kind of happiness that this feeling gave me. So the purple continues to come and the net continues to come, but like, I'm watching the purple for a while because it's just so beautiful, which makes me feel good because that's the color of my aura. And I don't know how to explain to you that I know that that's the color of my aura, except for I had a client one time who was an aura reader. She could kind of tell you the colors of your aura, and she told me that. She told me that that was the color of my aura, but she couldn't really explain it. And then whenever I saw it, I understood. I understood exactly what it was that she meant. I could have just sat there and watched this purple all day because it was like my spirit, my soul, and it was like I was trying to connect to it as much as I could. So, you know, after a while, the therapist is like, okay, so he feels like nothing's happening, but to me, like, there's so much happening. So we decided that we're going to go into another regression, and we go, and he goes back into the tapping, and he was doing a countdown. And before he got to number 1, I felt this cold, clammy feeling all around me. And I felt pain, and like my body instantly started like curling up and tensing up. I kind of started whimpering a little bit. Everything's cold, it's dark, it's painful. I can feel where there has been physical and sexual abuse that has happened. I'm struggling to breathe. It's a cave or a cellar. I don't know what it was, but I was stuck there. I don't know how to explain how I knew, but this is just the things that you learn whenever you're in hypnotherapy. Like, you are the only reason that the therapist knows what is going on, or the practitioner knows what is going on, is because you are telling them. So whatever it is you feel is happening is what's happening. You can't tell somebody, or somebody else can't tell you this is what you're dealing with, or what you're feeling, or what you're going through, because you're the only one that has the experience. Nobody else has this experience. So I can tell that I've been trapped in this cave for a while, and that I've been being physically and sexually abused, and there's a man around, but I can't see him, but I'm scared. But that's not what I'm scared the most of. I'm not scared the most of like this guy coming back and continuing to physically and sexually abuse me, or keep me chained up, or whatever was happening. What I'm scared of is I can feel out there, outside of this cave, that there's somebody that I love. And my fear is that either they're not going to find me, that they're not looking for me, or that if I ever escape, that they're going to see me as so tainted because of the things that have happened, that they're not going to want anything to do with me. Which tells me that this is from a further time. So, we went through a mission. The mission was to get the girl out of the cave. My spirit had to be the person to get the girl out of the cave. And we did. We got the girl out of the cave. And it was kind of like there was a lapse in what happened next. It was like helping. The way we talked about it is we couldn't get out, so we searched and we bring in this wise woman. The wise woman is supposed to be my soul, or something that I'm connected to. He covers my hands. Therapist covers my hands, and we decide to work together. And I'm looking for a light. That's the only way to get the girl out of the tunnel. We've got to find light, or out of this cave or whatever. I've got to find light. So we find light and find a little tunnel, and we get her out. The only way to get her out is pick her up and take her out. So we do, and I'm really confused at this point. Not sure how this just happened, how we just got this girl out of the cave. For as far as what happened in that past life, I'm not sure how that girl got out of the cave. Maybe this is exactly how. Maybe this is like a time warp, and some spirit guide helped her out of the cave. But we get her out, and she's safe. And at a point, I'm not the girl anymore. I'm just my spirit watching. And my spirit watching is seeing her sitting next to a tree that's beside of a pond. And I see a man walking over to her. I see a disagreement. I don't hear it, but I see it. And the man's walking away, and she looks defeated. To a normal onlooker, that would appear as though her fear came true. But that's not what I think happened. What I think happened was she pushed him away because she was afraid of the judgment and a betrayal that could happen, that, this is going to happen. So the reason how this is important to me is because it's a continuous repeating of patterns. For me, I've went through all these things. I've went through toxic relationships where I've been choked to the point where I passed out. Didn't die, but I passed out. I've been in a situation, put myself in a situation, but still been in a situation where I was tricked into being kidnapped and had to go through a series of events to get myself out. I don't want to put too much of that part out there. I'm just going to say that I was tricked into going halfway across the country and then had to go through a lot to be able to get back. And I don't really talk about much of what happened while I was there, but it was definitely an organization larger than myself, and I don't know if I was going to be pimped out or sex trafficked or what was going to happen, but the only reason that I choose not to go too far into that right now is because this is going to be a live video that's on YouTube, and I don't want that person, wherever they may be, to see this and try to retaliate again. So I was under for 3.5 hours. 3 hours. I was under for 3 hours because I chose to be. The only reason, honestly, that I came out of this hypnotherapy is because I had to pee. Like, I don't even know why this man let me be under for that long. Maybe because it was a Saturday and he didn't have anybody else to see. So we talked about the feelings that I experienced through these regressions and how these feelings have been going on, continuing in my life. So not feeling worthy, not feeling loved, feeling as though it's some kind of source of entertainment, which is what I guess the girl in the cave was, even though it wasn't entertaining to her. That's what it is to somebody who chooses to kidnap and trap and rape and manipulate and physically abuse somebody. It's a sick form of entertainment for themselves. Feeling as though I'm some kind of fraud because whatever I was prior to getting into that cave was not who I was when I came out of that cave. That my traumas don't matter, and that